Chapter 23 Secret Treasure. Over the course of the next year, William remains living and working on the Bonner farm while continuing to grow his meat and fur business. He fields numerous requests for his carpentry skills as well, filling his coffers but leaving him very little downtime. Nevertheless, when the work is done, he always makes time for his Scottish princess. Their time often spent hiking and exploring, or hunting, fishing, or trapping. A win-win for William, as he gets to spend time with his girl while supporting his growing business. From weak and wounded foot to thrill of the hunt, like a tulip whose flower has just crested the surface, William and Mary's love at first sight is blossoming into a full-blown courtship. What began as a spark is maturing into an infinite torch, and with each passing day, their light as a couple burns brighter. As the seasons roll one into another, their bond deepens, but their relationship remains platonic. But that, as they say, is about to change. The Wilderness, west of Old Town, Shenandoah Valley, Virginia Colony, noon on a late spring day, 1737. Resting on the bank of their favorite fishing hole, William and Mary sit side by side watching their lines loosely laying in the water. Leaning back comfortably on a fallen hemlock, they breathe in the calm serenity as they wait for a bite. It is peaceful, with the sweet song of birds and a light breeze serenading them. Daydreaming, Mary gazes into the wild blue without a care. She hears a fish jump, but it is gone by the time she looks. She turns to William, only to find him staring into the abyss, eyes shaded by his broad-brimmed hat. She whispers, "What do you see?" He smiles. "Sunlight dancing on the water." "Dancing, you say?" Still gazing in awe, he sits up and waves a hand over the water. "Like all the stars fell from heaven just to dance and refresh themselves on the water." "So, you're a philosopher now?" Still gazing with wonder, "Can he no see 'em?" Turning to the frolicking light, "Aye, 'tis lovely." Overcome by the beauty of God's creation, they silently gaze at the dancing light. Breaking the silence, she says, "Tell me the story about the time you killed that bear and saved your friend." "Oh, you're no wanting to hear that again, are you?" Mary sits up and stares him down. "Mr. Alban, if that were true, I would no be asking." "But you've heard that 100 times. In fact, you've probably heard it so much you could tell it." Crossing her arms, she sighs. "Well, that's true, but it always sounds better when you tell it. That way I can watch it in me mind while I listen." "Watch? What do you mean, watch?" "I mean, it all unfolds as you tell it, and I can see it in me mind. You jumping from JJ onto that angry old bear's back, tattooing, standing knee-deep in the water looking like a drowned rat, and his horse floating down the river. 'Tis a wonderful story. Won't you tell it, please?" William sits up, tips back his hat, and with a raise of his brow, counters, "I've a better idea. After hearing you talk about it, I want to try this watching thing. So, why don't you tell the story, and I'll watch?" Mindful of her line, Mary holds her pole, entranced by the waltz of water and light. Popping off the log, she turns to William. "All right, then." Playfully, he queries, "All right? All right what?" "All right, I'll tell you a story," he quips. "A story? Really?" "Aye, now shush," she says, smacking his arm. He chuckles. "All right, then, get to telling." Straightening herself, she sets down her pole and runs her fingers through her hair, tossing it back over her shoulders and clearing her throat. "So, many years ago, there were a young man, a warrior, who traveled to distant lands in search of his fortune." William chirps. "Aha! The elusive pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Your warrior's an Irishman." Raising a hand to smack him, she pauses, then lowers it and continues. Now, although our warrior, Irishman, William chirps with a raised finger, warrior travels with no other, he's never truly alone, for throughout his adventures he makes friends of everyone he meets. So, he's a friendly Irishman. With a stern look and a whack of his leg, she chides. Aye, when he's no interrupting. Now, shush! William throws his hands up in surrender and leans back on the log. All right, I'm shushing. Bruised, but shushing. Mary straightens herself again. Now, like most men, our Irish warrior has felt fear coursing through the whole of his spirit, and yet he never lets it control him or keep him from what he must do. Now, you may ask why, and the answer I'd point out is very clear. Because he's learned to embrace his fear, rather than run from it, clearing his mind of all distraction and viewing the world through clearer eyes. William tips back his broad brim. Wow! Who is this fella? A knight in shining armor? Mr. Alban, if when you interrupt me again, I'm telling you now, I'm gonna smack you. Now, where were I? William points to his eyes. Right, clear eyes. Gazing beyond the fishing hole, she continues. As he ventures through the untamed wilderness, he overcomes many obstacles, challenges, and difficulties, and sometimes deadly encounters. He mumbles. It sounds to me like this guy's just a few nuts short of a pie. I mean, why put yourself through it? Keeping her promise, she smacks his leg, barking. Why, to find his secret treasure, of course. Tugging on his line, he bellows. But I... Staying true to her word, she smacks him again, this time knocking his hat off with a playful wallop to the back of his head. Hey! He laughs, returning the hat to his head. No, just any treasure, but a secret treasure. His treasure. And although he's searched his whole life, his treasure always eludes him, even when it's staring him right in the eyes. Wait! What? She glares at him with a raised brow. The question is no what, but why. And the answer is because, on those rare occasions, for some inexplicable reason, he simply fails to embrace his fear, leaving him too bloody blind to see it. Sounds like your warrior fellow ain't too smart. Mary turns to him with a stink-eyed glare, a finger firmly in his face. Aye, and that's the problem. What? That he's blind or just bloody stupid? She glares at him sternly. Both, actually. Because he's blind as a stone wall and just as stupid. Sounds like he needs to take a closer look. Still glaring, she quips. Perhaps he should. As she leans in closer, her words finally sink in, and his Cheshire cat grin fades to a look of aw shit. As a tremor jolts through his body, he clears his throat and swallows, his demeanor changing from confident, albeit sarcastic beau to frightened little boy in the blink of an eye. As he freezes up, Mary knows what she must do, what she has longed to do. Leaning in, she brings the corner of her mouth to his ear and whispers, Oh, William, can he no see? As her warm breath caresses his neck and ear, he trembles and his eyes roll slowly closed. Ever so slowly, she slides closer, gently gliding her soft cheek over his, their noses kissing and caressing. Then, as a chill cascades over his body, he feels the tender warmth of her soft lips upon his for the first time. Her porcelain skin and the sweet fragrance of her sultry blonde locks and warm breath engulfing him as her mouth glides ever so slowly over his quivering lips. Eyes closed, they tremble as their mouths part, their breathing slow and shallow. Hearts pounding, they immortalize their first kiss, carefully storing it in that special place deep within, where only the most precious of moments are kept. Then slowly they open their eyes to a tender gaze. At long last they have sipped from the passion well and found it fulfilling. Leaning in forehead to forehead and nose to nose, they tenderly hold hands. Their breathing still shallow, their mouths collide again as they slowly and tenderly devour each other with passionate kisses, their lips discovering curves and nooks previously unexplored. Catching their breath, they pull away slowly, eyes welling with tears. As they exchange an endearing smile, their tears cascade down their cheeks and lips. As one slips from William's eyelash, she reaches out in time to catch it with the finger. In a moment of silent lucidity, she brings it to her lips, kissing it tenderly. Like God snapping a finger, Mary's pole jerks hard and they both jump. When they realize what is happening, Mary's pole is already heading for the water. Thinking fast, she leaves her bow in a state of abandoned euphoria and jumps into the water after it. Lunging forward to grab her pole, she crashes face first into the water as she lands. Coming up out of the water, she stands dripping from head to toe, pole in hand. And just like that, the Mary who just moments before had been bathing in the wake of her first kiss is now mare-bear determined fisherman standing knee-deep in the water tussling with the fish. Descending from his euphoric cloud, William jumps to his feet wide-eyed and watching with wonder. As she takes control of her pole, arching her back in the fight, he hoots. "Woohoo!" Battling, she shouts, "'Tis a whopper! Do you need any help?" The look from the corner of her eye answers his question. Resting back on his elbows, he enjoys the show as she wrestles the monster to the bank. When she finally gets it to shore, she turns and faces William, pole in one hand, fish in the other. He cheers. "Woohoo!" William stands and steps forward to give her a congratulatory hug, and she shoves the pole and fish into his hands. "And now you get to clean 'em." He shoves them back. "Sorry, Mare Bear. You catch 'em, you clean 'em." She pauses for a moment, taking the pole and fish, then shoves William backward and into the drink. Dripping, he stands and looks at her. "What'd I do to deserve that?" "Whatever do you mean, Sir Knight? Did you no say if I catch 'em, I clean 'em?" "Well, yeah, but—" "Well, did I no catch ya, and are you no clean?" William's shoulders release and his head falls back. With the look of shock still covering his face, he looks down at his dripping body, arms wide. Lifting his head, he smiles, chuckling. "I must admit, you have indeed caught me, and it would seem I've been thoroughly washed." Dropping the pole and fish to the ground, she throws him a seductive smile. Taking him by his wet buckskin shirt, she pulls him in for a kiss. As their lips meet, she pulls him down, pinning him to the ground. Straddling him, she takes his face in her hands and leans in, but at the last second redirects, sliding along his chest to his ear, whispering, "Good, and now that you're clean, what say we get a little dirty?" As she glides her lips back along his cheeks to his lips, a chill runs down his spine, and he takes in a deep breath as it washes over him. As their lips meet, soft, tender kisses ensue. As their passion builds, the kissing becomes more aggressive, and their mouths, necks, and ears become entangled. Several long and glorious minutes later, they lay in an exhausted heap, their bodies entwined at the water's edge, catching their breath. When it dawns on them someone might happen along, they put themselves back together, grab their poles and fish, and head for home. Riding side by side, they hold hands, giggling and smiling at each other as they relish in their shared gift. It is late spring, and the Virginia landscape is carpeted with colorful wildflowers, green grasses, hardy evergreens, and a menagerie of trees teeming with life for as far as the eye can see. And with the birds filling the air with song, it is the perfect backdrop for their fairy tale story. As one might expect, in the weeks that follow, the obvious increase in their shared affection does not go unnoticed. One example occurs one evening over supper, when Sir John and his wife share an eyebrow-raising moment. "Milady, might you be swayed into passing the totties?" William asks with a charming smile. With a wry grin, Mary picks up the bowl and chirps, "Aye, but just 'cause you asked so sweetly." Sir John and Sarah's eyes raise, then lower. Smiling like the cat who caught the canary, he takes the bowl from her and says, "Thanks, Mare Bear." Sir John and Sarah's eyes pop up again, meeting from across the table. They share a momentary glance, then slowly turn their eyes to William and Mary, who oddly failed to pick up on the gaffe, carrying on instead like their exchange was routine. "Well, you're more than welcome, young squire," Mary says with a flirtatious wink. Sir John gives his wife a raise of his right brow, and she lets out a small chuckle, just loud enough for everyone at the table to hear, and they all stop to look at her. She waves them off. "'Tis nothing. I'm fine. 'Twere just a little something in me throat, but I choked it down." When she finishes speaking, they return to their eating, utensils and plates chiming and mouths chewing. Slowly chewing a mouthful of food, Sarah sits there quietly watching. What she sees before her is a happy family and an eldest daughter who has finally fallen in love. She glances at Sir John and he smiles at her with the mouthful of food. She giggles. Looking at him with admiration, she understands why, aside from a surprised glance, he refrained from reacting to the slip. Because he, like the rest of the family, have long since welcomed William into their circle. And although never discussed, both she and her husband have long suspected it was only a matter of time before William and their daughter found their way to each other. And after more than a year since plucking Mary from her parents' wagon, William knows the time has come to approach Sir John and seek his permission to take Mary's hand. Attempting to ease into the subject, William concocts a plan. He will invite Sir John for an early morning hunt. Then, while enjoying their favorite activity, and hopefully when Sir John's defenses are down, he will breach the subject. And so it is, he puts his plan in motion, extending Sir John an invitation he knows he cannot refuse. The Wilderness, west of Old Town, Shenandoah Valley, Virginia Colony. 1 week later, early morning on the first day of summer, Friday, June 21st, 1737. Just as they have done a dozen times or more, the Scottish nobleman and the Irish warrior hunter arise from their slumber in the darkness of the pre-dawn. William, alone in his cabin, heats up the coffee kettle while slipping into his buckskins. While standing next to the redbud, a buckskin-clad Sir John sips a hot cup of tea prepared by his wife. In the darkness, he listens to the water as it swiftly rolls by. After their morning cups of go-juice, they grab their weapons, mount their steeds, and head off to the meeting place for their pre-dawn hunt. However, as they ride toward each other, the nobleman is completely unaware of the warrior hunter's true mission, and William's typical demeanor and tone when Sir John rides up give him no indication he is about to be ambushed. "Morning, Sir John." "Aye, and to you as well, young squire." "Sir John, something tells me today's hunt is going to be like no other." "Is that so?" "Aye, there's a spot nearby I want to show you. So, what say we tie off and hike in real quiet like?" "Lead the way, young squire," Sir John says as he dismounts, pulling his musket from its sheath. Slowly working their way through the densely wooded forest, William whispers in his hunting voice, "'Tis certainly a fine day for a hunt." In a similarly faint voice, "Aye, but every day's a good day for a hunt, young squire." "'Tis true. So, seems those new calves of yours are fattening up quick." "Aye, and the sooner they do, the sooner I can sell 'em," he quietly quips. Bruce Family Farm, just outside of Old Town, near Redbud, Shenandoah Valley, Virginia Colony. Later that morning, Friday, June 21st, 1737. With her siblings and Sir John away from the cabin, Mary and her mother share a rare private moment. Like a couple of schoolgirls, they talk openly about the men in their lives. Sarah asks, "So, how do you think you'll go about it? Just come straight out with it, or try to be clever?" Mary rests her arms on the table in front of her, thinking, and breathes, "Good Lord, I dinna ken." "Well, whichever way he chooses. I hope your dad didn't shoot him, Sarah giggles. 'Cause that could complicate things. Mary playfully smacks her arm, snapping, Ma! What? You ken your da? He can be a hard one. Well, if he does shoot him, he better no miss, or William's likely to shoot back. Aye, and he's no ken to missing, Sarah laughs. Dinna worry, dear. Everything'll be just fine. You ken your da adores William. And speaking plainly, he's more than proven himself worthy of your hand. At least where I'm standing. Her words bring joyful tears to Mary's eyes. When Sarah looks up and sees her baby girl crying, she leans over and wraps her in a motherly embrace. Caressing her golden locks, Sarah whispers, You've fallen in love with a good man, and I ken you'll be happy for the rest of your days. I love you, Mary, with all that I am, and I'm happy for you, for the both of you. With tear-filled eyes, Mary smiles and nods. Fighting back the tears in her voice, she replies, I ken we will. I always have, since the day we met. Gently rubbing her back, Sarah confesses, As have I, dear, as have I. The Wilderness, west of Old Town, Shenandoah Valley, Virginia Colony. A little later that morning, Friday, June 21st, 1737. As our two hunters weave through the forest searching for game, they come upon a large pond, and William sees an opportunity to breach the subject of the day. Pointing to the far side of the pond, he says, Look yonder! Do you see him? Sir John peers across the pond to find a pair of ducks floating near the shore. Aye, a pair of mallards. Beautiful creatures, those mallards. Do you ken they partner for life? William cleverly queries. Just as it should be, young squire, as God intended it. For when they finally find each other, together forever they be. 'Tis a beautiful thing. 'Tis a rare thing, like you and Miss Sarah. Sir John chuckles. Aye, assuming she didna throw me out for farting and snoring in me sleep. William laughs. So, how'd you ken Miss Sarah were the one? He ponders the question as they weave side by side through the forest. Stopping abruptly, he waits for William to turn to him, then looks him in the eyes and says, It were easy. Me heart told me so. William sighs. Like it beats for no other. He slaps a hand on William's shoulder and nods with a squeeze. Precisely! William smiles sincerely. I ken the feeling. Hand still on his shoulder, Sir John cocks his head. After an awkward moment, William straightens himself. 'Cause that's how I feel about Mary. Silence ensues. Then, with a squint of his right eye, Sir John takes a sharp step backward, raises his barrel, and crack! As the musket erupts, sparks and smoke fill the air as the explosion echoes across the otherwise peaceful wilderness. As the smoke clears, Sir John spies William holding the left side of his head, staggering about before collapsing to a knee. Turning his eyes to the distance, Sir John glares through the dissipating smoke, then back at the young Irishman. Forgive me, young squire, but I had no choice. Still holding his ear, William stands and turns to him. What? Momentarily deaf in his left ear, he looks up to find Sir John offering a hand. Gasping, William takes his hand and leaps to his feet, shouting, What's that you say? As he shakes off the dirt, Sir John points and William spins around to find a massive elk cow laying in the distance. Thrusting a fist in the air, Sir John shouts, I got her! Can you believe it? We've no been out here more than an hour when from out of nowhere there she appeared. Unbelievable! Waving a hand and shaking his head, William shouts, What? Sir John shouts back, I said I got her! Squinting with his mouth open, William nods and looks back at the elk cow. As he is looking down range, Sir John takes hold of his shoulder and turns him around. With a firm squeeze, he looks his Irish friend in the eyes. And so do you, if that's what you're asking. William pauses to process what he just heard, then shakes his head. But how? Come now, lad. This Scotsman may be old, but he's no blind. So, Are you asking or no? William straightens himself. Are you saying I have your blessing to take Mary's hand? With a proud smile, Sir John extends a hand. Aye, young squire, you most certainly do. As they shake, Sir John pulls him in for a fatherly hug and whispers, We'd be damn proud to have you. Welcome to the clan, lad. Pulling away, he laughs. I just dinna ken what took you so long. Laughing, they head towards the fallen elk. So, when do you plan on asking her? William scratches his cheek. I dinna ken. Well, you ain't getting any younger, lad. If it were me, I'd be running home to ask her right now, before someone else beats me to it. They both laugh. Then William stops and stands there for a moment, stone-faced. Without a word, he turns and runs for his horse. Thanks, Sir John. I'll see you later. The nobleman throws his hands on his hips. No, just hold on. I'll no be dragging this beast home alone, lest ye want me to change me mind. William stops, turns, and walks back. Well, in that case, Sir John pats his shoulder. Wise decision, lad. I always said, Sarah, that William's a smart one. After dressing their kill, the two happy hunters head back to the Bruce farm on foot with horses in tow. On each of their backs rests a travois carrying no less than 250 pounds of elk meat. So, tell me, young squire, have you a ring? Confidently strolling along, William smiles at him. As a matter of fact, I do. I traded for one when that German fella Becker arrived in town. You mean the chubby one? Aye, the baker. He said that's why he moved here from Delaware. Apparently, things didn't work out how he planned with his betrothed, so he moved here to avoid the embarrassment. So, did she leave him standing at the altar, or just say no and run back to Germany? Something like that. I didn't ken the details, only that he was all too happy to make the trade. As he put it, she were a plump, persnickety pain in the arse. Sir John laughs. That's a mouthful. William adds. Aye, the way I see it, it worked out for the both of us. He got his freedom, and I got a ring. Lord almighty! So, what did you trade? Just $2, butchered, smoked, and delivered. Can you believe it? Oh, you're a shrewd haggler, young squire. Very shrewd indeed. With a devilish grin. Well, a man's got to eat, Sir John, but he canna eat a ring. Just then, they break through the tree line about 100 yards from the Bruce's cabin. Well, here we are. Are you ready? William takes a deep breath. I've been ready. That may be true, but you're starting to sweat. I hope you didn't lose your nerve. William looks at him out the corner of his eye. I'm sweating because it's hot. Don't worry. Mary's one doe I'll no let slip away. We shall see, young squire. We shall see. Bruce Family Farm, just outside of Old Town, near Red Bud, Shenandoah Valley, Virginia Colony, just before noon, Friday, June 21st, 1737. They haul the massive elk behind the meat house, and with a little ingenuity and help from J.J. and Sir John's Bay, they hang the two halves of the enormous beast from a tree before heading inside. As they approach the front door, Sir John gives William an encouraging pat. Good luck, young squire. William gives him an appreciative smile and takes a deep breath. As they enter, they are greeted by family as they hang their hats and lean their weapons in the corner. As they enter, Sarah whispers, He's still alive. Mary slaps her on the thigh. Well, good morning, gents. You're just in time to eat, Sarah says, placing a platter of food on the table where the family is seated. Coming in behind her is Mary with a bowl of white pepper gravy, which she also places on the table. Taking in a whiff of the tasty aroma, William takes a seat. Biscuits and gravy. Sir John joins his family at the table. If you be so kind, I'll have a spot of that tea, dear. Filling his cup, Sarah turns to William. Tea? Aye, thank you, Miss Sarah. Filling his cup, she comments. I must say, I'm a little surprised to see you back so soon.
Bad day?
Sarah and Mary's ears perk up as William and Sir John exchange a glance from across the table. As they lean in, Sir John blurts, "Well, if that huge elk out yonder makes for a bad day, I should hope they'd all be so terrible. Am I right, young squire?" Filling his plate, William nods. "Indeed you are." To everyone's amusement, young James exclaims,
I wish my hunts were so terrible. Eggs, Mr. Alban?
Mary asks with a wink as she fills his plate with 3 pan-fried beauties. Peeking over his shoulder with a devilish grin,
Why, thank you, Miss Bruce. I dinna mind if I do.
"If when you're done serving His Holiness, I'd like some of them eggs too, Miss Bruce," Sir John sarcastically chirps. While her daughter serves the eggs, Sarah places a platter of pan-fried slices of smoked pork in the middle of the table and settles into her chair.
You best behave, or I'll be serving you porridge tomorrow.
As he is no bigger a fan of porridge than William, Sir John responds with bug eyes and a curled upper lip. She rolls her eyes, shaking her head. After serving the eggs, Mary sits and everyone joins hands while Sir John blesses the meal. "Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this bounty of food, and the beautiful elk hanging out yonder. We pray, Lord, that it nourish our bodies, minds, souls, and spirits." Peeking at William, he adds, "and that it gives us courage to do what needs doing." Everyone at the table lifts their heads, peering around the table as if to say, "Courage?" Head down, Sir John peers inconspicuously at William through the tops of his eyes, only to find the Irishman mirroring his gaze. "And we pray, Lord, that it gives us the intestinal fortitude to overcome our fear and any obstacles along the way. Amen." With he and William maintaining their gaze, the others say amen, lift their heads, and dig in. As always, the men sop their gravy and eggs with Sarah's buttered biscuits, while the ladies, on the other hand, take a bit more refined approach, eating with utensils. As the meal progresses, so too does the conversation. Cleverly, Sarah asks,
So, what are your plans today?
"Well, I for one have a 500-pound elk needs skinning and butchering," Sir John boasts, wagging his head about like the king of all hunters. Sarah teases,
Sounds like someone got lucky this morn. 'Tis no every day the mighty Muckwa gets bested on a hunt.
Still riding the high from his good fortune, her husband professes, "Aye, and so quickly at that. We weren't out there more than an hour when there she were. But truth be told, William were no bloody help anyway. He were too busy yakking." A few giggles rise up as all eyes turn to William. With a raised brow, Sarah remarks,
That didn't sound like you, William. What were distracting you?
William stops and looks at her from across the table, then goes back to chewing a mouthful of food.
I declare, it must have been important. Very important, I'm thinking. I've no heard of a time when you weren't focused on a hunt,
Sarah remarks, tongue pressed against the inside of her cheek. Reaching under the table, William pokes a finger into the pouch hanging from his waist. With the ring on the tip of his finger, he peers at Sarah with a sinister grin. Then turning to her eldest daughter, he asks, "Miss Mary, can I trouble you for some more tea?" Smiling warmly, she stands to retrieve the kettle.
It would be me pleasure, fine sir.
As she turns away, William slips to a knee. To the excitement of her family, he proudly holds out the ring, presenting it like a knight in shining armor. With silent anticipation, the family rests on the edge of their seats, watching and waiting. When she turns back to the table, she stops dead in her tracks. Reaching out for the hot kettle, Sarah says,
Let me take that, dear.
With the morning light just peeking through the windows, Mary's long, wavy hair shines softly in the glow. Her golden locks laying over her right shoulder and gracefully cascading down her chest. Her baby blues glistening through joyful tears and her beaming aura. And in that moment, she is all that William sees. As silence ensues, he gazes upon her, painting the moment in his memory. As they gaze at each other, her family remains on the edge of their seats. eyes fixed on Mary, William breaks the silence. "You're right, Sir John. 'Tis your heart that tells you. And what me heart's been telling me is she's the one." Sarah, who was sitting across from her husband, reaches out, taking his hand. He turns to her, smiling his approval through tear-filled eyes. With a squeeze of her hand, he gives her a wink, and a tear slips out and rolls down his cheek. Tilting her head with admiration, Mary stands with hands over heart, gazing at her frontiersman. "Mary, since the day we met, you've been me dearest friend, me voice of reason, and at times even me teacher. Your beauty inspires God Himself to make the flowers more beautiful. Your voice stirs the birds into song, and your gentle, lively spirit and caring heart have most assuredly stolen mine. Without you, I'm empty, and so it is, I wish to spend the rest of me days with you. So, I'm asking, Mare Bear, will you take me hand and make this Irishman whole forevermore?" Smiling warmly, she steps forward, taking his hands. Gently caressing his fingers with her thumb, she looks into his eyes and in the softest, sweetest voice whispers, "Aye, young squire, I believe I will."